I sat in my usual corner at the brunch spot my family frequented every weekend. The coffee in front of me had gone cold, but I kept stirring it slowly, an old habit that helped me stay calm. No one paid attention to me because, as always, the spotlight belonged to my sister, Vivian. She sat with her legs crossed, morning sunlight catching the sparkle of the diamond ring on her hand. "Your old job really was a snooze fest," she laughed, her voice loud enough to echo through the cafe. "It's kind of hilarious that someone in their 30s still doesn't have a real job." I heard every word, every pause in her sentence. No one else laughed, just Vivian, the only one amused by her own joke. I didn't look at her. I just pressed my lips together and kept stirring my cold coffee. My mother awkwardly murmured, "Vivian, don't be like that." But my sister only shrugged. To her, silence was proof of failure. My father tried to steer the conversation elsewhere, something about the Eggs Benedict being a little too salty, but Vivian's smirk lingered, like a hook waiting for a reaction. I said nothing. I was never the talkative one at family gatherings, and somehow, that made them assume I had nothing worth saying. But the truth was, ever since I chose to live behind the scenes, silence had become the space where I built an entire world, one none of them could imagine. I remember exactly when I first realized that some of the greatest things didn't need to be shown off. I was 27, sitting beside Sam, my best friend from college, as we typed the first lines of code for what would later become the core of an intelligent data analytics system used by banks, hospitals, and even government agencies. Now, at 33, I'm the co-founder of DataLoom, a tech company valued at over $80 million. 0 cents, but no one in my family knows. I never appeared on the official website. In interviews, Sam was the face of the company, and me? I chose to stay behind the spotlight. My name only appeared on internal documents, investor agreements, and Vivian's pay stub. Funny, isn't it? The sister who never hesitated to mock my quietness is now applying to the company I helped build, completely unaware that the person reviewing her application is the fulfiller she's mocked for years. I watched her chatter on, bragging about the now-defunct accounting firm she worked for. "But it's all good," she waved it off. "I'm a problem solver. I'm targeting a new company. Something called DataLoom? Heard they're hiring." My heart skipped a beat. For the first time during the meal, I looked up, then quickly looked back down, careful to keep the flicker in my eyes unnoticed. She kept going. "I already applied. If they bring me in, I'll handle their budget better than anyone there. If they pass me up, it's their loss." I bit my tongue to keep from laughing. That sentence, bold and smug, was a carbon copy of the lines she used to throw at me, claiming I'd never get anywhere hiding in the shadows. And maybe she'll never realize it, but in that very shadow, I built an empire, one she's now about to walk into, under my leadership. Still, I chose to remain silent, not out of fear, but because I knew the truth would speak for itself. I remember my 12th birthday vividly. While everyone sang happy birthday, Vivian burst out of the living room holding a giant gold trophy. "Our baby just won the state dance competition," my mom beamed, wrapping her arms around Vivian. I stood by my cake, candles flickering in front of me, but no one asked what I wished for. And I didn't even bother blowing them out. Vivian was always like that. Bright, loud, always giving people something to clap for. Me? I quietly gathered my gifts, went to my room, opened the old laptop Dad gave me the year before, and kept building my first data model. Even as a child, I loved what others found boring. I liked taking toys apart to see how they worked. I loved figuring out why a video game ran so smoothly. I loved the feeling of writing a block of code and watching it work flawlessly. My mom used to say, "Eleanor can sit for hours and you won't hear a sound." Dad used to joke, "We've got a firework and a flashlight in this house, guess which is which?" No guessing needed. Vivian was the firework, I was the flashlight. Steady, but overlooked. As we grew older, the gap between us widened. Vivian studied art, made a few appearances on local TV thanks to her dramatic performances. I studied computer science at a tech institute. No one in the family remembers the school's name. When I graduated, they forgot the date entirely. They were too busy planning Vivian's fashion line launch. I don't blame them. Sometimes I thought maybe I just wasn't interesting enough, but silence slowly became the space where I found my value. When Sam and I started Dataloom, all we had were 2 beat-up laptops and a dream to build a flexible analytics system that could predict user behavior in real time. Sam was the talker. He pitched to investors, did press interviews, ran meetings. I was the one backstage, writing every line of code, fixing every bug. A year later, a major bank signed a trial contract. 2 years in, our system was integrated into finance, healthcare, and risk analysis platforms. By year 3, Dataloom was valued at $83 million, 0 cents. I held 49% of the shares. But ask anyone? They'd only know Sam Fletcher. As for Eleanor Green, never featured in a headline. And that was how I wanted it. I didn't care for hollow handshakes, flashing cameras, or whispers behind my back. I wanted to work, to build, to help people make better decisions with what I created. As for Vivian, after her own fashion startup failed due to financial mismanagement, she went back to accounting at a small firm. Then came layoffs. Now, she's pinning her hopes on a new opportunity she has no idea I created. I don't know if she'll ever see me as an equal. To Vivian, I'll always be the little sister with her head in the clouds and a bunch of old laptops. But she's about to walk into a space where every wall, every budget model, every analytics tool was designed by me. And what I wonder most is this. When she sees my name, Eleanor Green, at the bottom corner of her paycheck or the next budget draft, will she recognize it? Or will she still believe I'm just a faded extra in the dazzling world she chases? A part of me hopes she never finds out. Another part wants to see her face when the truth finally hits. I don't need her admiration. I just want her to stop looking down on me. That night, back in my quiet apartment on the 18th floor, Seattle's sky was wrapped in a soft mist like a velvet curtain after a show. I pulled out my laptop, logged into Dataloom's internal system, thousands of lines of code and reports I knew by heart. The first notification popped up from HR. Recommended candidate, Vivian Green. I leaned back in my chair, eyes settling on the file on screen. I had expected this moment, but still, my heart paused for a beat. Her smiling photo, dressed in a beige blazer, stood out on the application form. I skimmed through her experience, skills, and the internal reviewer's note. Confident demeanor, strong communicator, well-suited for the budget analyst role. Recommend for next round interview. I didn't type a word, just clicked the 3 dots in the corner. A window appeared. Forward, code, cop, pro. I clicked approve. She got the job. No one at the company, except Sam, knew I was a co-founder. From day one, we agreed to use only Sam's name on all media and public documents. I didn't want my image floating around the internet. I'd seen too many people lose their personal lives chasing fame. I didn't need praise. I needed freedom. So within Dataloom, I was simply Eleanor, the senior technical advisor who usually worked remotely. I only came into the office once a week, after 6 p.m. The rest of the time, I led projects, approved spending, and mapped out strategies, all from behind the scenes. Sam was the one in front of cameras, shaking hands with investors and speaking at tech conferences. He always respected my choice, never once revealing my identity to employees or the press. I used to wonder if that decision was the right one, but now, watching Vivian step into the world I built with my own hands, I was certain staying silent was the only way to make this moment interesting. On her first day at work, I stayed home, just as scheduled. But I turned on the internal camera system, something very few people knew I designed. From a low-angle view in the shared kitchen on the 9th floor, I saw her standing near the espresso machine, eyes wide with surprise as she looked at the digital bulletin board displaying the company's ongoing projects. This is the new company that hired me. she told a colleague proudly. Word is, the two founders are super private. No one's ever seen the other one. Might just be a legal placeholder. I chuckled softly. It wasn't the first time I'd heard someone question the existence of the second co-founder. That afternoon, Sam video called me. She's off to a decent start, he said, sipping coffee. Confident, maybe a bit showy, but competent. Are you sure about this? She still has no idea who you are, Eleanor. For now, let's keep it that way, I replied. Just don't slip. If she's good, this is a great opportunity. If she's not, the truth will come out faster. This wasn't about revenge. I didn't want her to fail, nor did I seek payback. I just wanted to know, how would Vivian behave when no one recognized her? When there was no spotlight, no audience clapping? A week passed, then 2. Each time I came into the office after hours, she had already left. I kept my routine, approving budgets at night, reviewing HR files in the silence of empty halls and idle elevators. Until one day, I was in the basement server room checking the security system when I heard high heels echoing in the hallway. I stepped out and there she was, frozen in the doorway. Eleanor? She asked, startled and suspicious. I nodded calmly. Hi. She squinted. What are you doing down here? Only senior management has access to this area. I smiled. Well, I guess I have special access. She tilted her head, about to say something, when Sam stepped out from the adjacent room holding a folder. Hey, Eleanor, could you take a look at the new AI deployment plan? Needs your sign-off by Friday. I took the file and looked back at Vivian. Her eyes froze. There was no need for words. I knew in that moment the seed of doubt had been planted. And now I'd see... Would she finally see me? Or still view me as the harmless shadow she always believed I was? That morning, Seattle had a light drizzle. I had just signed off on the latest quarterly report when my phone rang. It was Sam. Eleanor, something funny just happened. I think Vivian's starting to get curious, he said with a hint of amusement. I looked up at my screen. A new email from accounting popped up. NS signature found in internal budget file. Please confirm approving authority. My heart slowed. It was time. Nearly 2 months had passed since Vivian officially joined Dataloom as a budget analyst. In that time, she had begun earning favor in a few departments, thanks to her confidence and persuasive skills. I had watched from afar, quietly approving her proposals and saying nothing. But she had started noticing details. During one budget approval for marketing, Vivian stumbled upon a file signed with an e-signature, clearly labeled Eleanor Green, NS. Alongside it was the co-founder's ID code. I knew she wouldn't let that go. The next morning, I overheard a snippet of conversation in the cafe downstairs. A young colleague whispered to Vivian, "Who's this NS person anyway? Like a ghost in the system. Never seen them, but they sign off on everything big." Vivian smirked. "Probably just a legal figurehead. I don't trust names without faces." Behind a wooden partition, I tightened my grip on my coffee cup. Don't trust. She'd learn soon enough. 3 days later, she walked straight into accounting and requested access to the full budget record for the most recent quarter. With her clearance, she opened file after file, until she reached the one where my name appeared again and again, beside documents outlining Dataloom's financial core. Not just signatures, but dates, file IDs, legal assessments. Every key piece carried my name. The same sister who believed I lived off the family's kindness was now staring at proof that I wasn't just any employee. I was the one who had approved her paycheck, the one behind the very reports she worked with every day. That afternoon, I got a system alert. Internal access request from account Vivian Green, Dartag Dataloom, founding records. She had reached the master file. I pictured her sitting there, soft blue light illuminating her face as she saw the founding documents for the first time. Eleanor Green and Samuel Fletcher. 50/50 ownership. Role description: Chief Technical Architect. Ms. Green. Her heart must have clenched. I knew her. When she's shocked, she doesn't scream or cause a scene. She goes silent. But her eyes blaze. Then she starts trying to prove, this can't be real. That same afternoon, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. I wanted to see her reaction with my own eyes. Sure enough, when I entered the pantry, I saw Vivian standing alone, gripping the edge of the counter, staring at a printed page. I approached gently. You okay? She turned, eyes locked on mine, furious and confused. Eleanor, she said, voice tight. You're the co-founder? I didn't answer immediately. I just nodded. How long? She asked. Since the beginning, I replied calmly. Sam and I started this company in a tiny room near Capitol Hill, back when you thought I was unemployed. Vivian laughed, not mockingly, but bitterly, half disbelief, half self-directed irony. So all this time, you were signing my paycheck. I worked under you? I nodded again. Not out of pride, Vivian, just doing my job. You're capable, so I approved your promotion. If you weren't, I'd have done the opposite. She fell silent, eyes dropping to the floor. I pulled a sheet from my pocket. A budget plan for an upcoming initiative on tech education for underprivileged kids. We're launching this soon. If you're interested, I think you'd be a great fit. She didn't take the paper. But her eyes changed. Something had shifted. I turned to leave, not pushing her. She'd need time. But for the first time in years, I saw in her eyes not scorn, but a silent question. How many times have I misjudged my little sister? The 5-year Dataloom anniversary gala was held in a glass building by Lake Union, where chandelier light danced like ripples across the floor. I stood in the guest dressing room, staring into the mirror. A long black dress, minimalist but elegant, fit snugly against a frame worn from years of all-nighters. My hair was pinned neatly, lips brushed with soft pink. I didn't want to stand out, but it wasn't about what I wanted anymore. Sam knocked, peeking in. Ready, Eleanor? I swallowed hard. Not really, but I guess no one's ever truly ready to step out of the dark. He laughed. You're not stepping out, you're stepping up. We walked onto the stage from the wings as the lights dimmed. The MC had just finished. And now, please welcome the 2 co-founders of Dataloom, Samuel Fletcher and Eleanor Green. Applause erupted, loud, clear, electric. Every eye turned toward me as I stepped into the light for the first time, officially and without a mask. I smiled, quietly but with purpose. And then I saw Vivian. She stood at the back of the room, one hand clutching a champagne glass she hadn't touched, her face stunned, her world flipped upside down. I knew that feeling. I'd lived it. On the day we landed our first $1 million investment, that moment when something no one thought was real becomes undeniable. Sam spoke first. He shared our journey from his mom's garage to Dataloom's current HQ, about server crashes at 2 a.m., deadlines that left us passed out on keyboards. When he passed the mic to me, the room fell silent. I took a deep breath. Hi, everyone. I'm Eleanor Green, and I guess, for many of you, this is the first time you've actually seen me. A gentle wave of laughter rolled through the crowd. It wasn't mocking, it was warm surprise. I continued, I'm not great at public speaking, and I never imagined I'd be up here. But 5 years ago, Sam and I had 2 things. An idea and a belief that technology could be built on trust. I glanced down at the audience. Vivian was still standing there, no longer holding her drink. Her eyes were fixed on me, as if trying to make sense of a stranger wearing the face of someone she once knew. I know I'm not the public face of this company, I went on, and that was entirely my choice. But today, I felt I owed you my presence, not for fame, but out of gratitude. Applause rose again. I nodded in thanks, then stepped back to let the MC close the ceremony. As the lights shifted to dinner, I made my way toward the buffet, looking for a quiet corner. But with every step, someone stopped me to chat. "We thought you were a legend," one software engineer laughed. "Didn't think you actually existed." I smiled, made a few polite replies, but my mind kept drifting back to Vivian. I glanced toward the pillar where she'd stood. Empty. She had left. And I didn't know when she'd gone or how much of my speech she'd heard. But I felt something, an empty space quietly opening inside me, where there should have been a warm look from someone close. That night, back in my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and sank into the sofa. My phone lit up with dozens of congratulatory messages from colleagues, partners, even my parents. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart. Words can't describe it." But nothing from Vivian. I replayed the live stream of the event on the company website, skipped ahead to my speech, then hit pause. I didn't need to watch it again. I just wanted to know one thing. In that moment, under the spotlight, what did Vivian see? A stranger? Or the little sister she once believed would never amount to anything? 2 days after the gala, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. Not for a meeting or to sign off on documents, just to finish something personal. I opened the drawer in the 10th floor conference room and pulled out a small walnut box I'd kept since college. Inside, I placed a navy linen-covered notebook, a black ink pen, and a handwritten card. It took me over an hour to write just a few lines. Not fancy, not poetic, just honest. "Vivian, thank you for your efforts at Datalum. You're truly capable, and I believe you'll go far. I'm proud to work with you, even if we began in silence. Eleanor." I folded the card, tucked it inside the notebook, and handed it to the internal delivery assistant with a quiet instruction. "Please give this to Vivian Green, no sender name." I wasn't expecting a reply. The gift wasn't an olive branch, it was just an open door, quiet and without pressure. So she could walk through if she chose to. The rest of the week passed with no message. No email, no thank you. But I noticed a few things. Vivian no longer sat back with crossed arms during meetings. She started taking detailed notes, asked sharp questions, and gave focused input. One afternoon, I stood outside the hallway, listening as she presented a revised budget strategy for an AI project that had gone over cost. Her voice was calm, clear. Her eyes no longer carried competitiveness, but something rarer: focus. I didn't walk in. I just stood there, hands in my pockets, and nodded silently. The following week, HR announced that Vivian had proposed a new internal sponsorship initiative for junior employees, especially female interns in tech roles. She recommended allocating a portion of the CSR budget to host a series of free career workshops led by department heads. I read the proposal 3 times, slowly. Initiative name: Touch the Screen, Touch the Future. And right below it, in italics, inspired by the quiet mission of Eleanor Green. I set the file down on the table, pressing my lips together gently. That afternoon, I stopped by the pantry as usual. Vivian was there, pouring hot water into a tea carafe. When she turned and saw me, we both froze for a second. But this time, her gaze was softer. No tension, no defensiveness. I was about to pass when she suddenly spoke. "The pen is beautiful, and the notebook. I've written a few pages." I turned to her. "I'm glad you liked it." She gave a small nod. I think I ever really understood you. Or maybe I just never tried." I smiled without answering. "There is something I want to say," she continued, voice lower. "You didn't have to give me a chance, but you did. And you never brought any of it up. You didn't diminish me to prove a point. That says more about you than anything else ever could." For the first time, I no longer saw Vivian as the teenager basking in the spotlight with a trophy in hand. I saw a woman learning to let go of pride and truly see others. "I don't know if I can make it right," she said slowly. "But I'll try." I nodded, feeling a weight lift from my chest. We don't need to tally up the past. We just start from today. We stood side by side for a moment longer. No explanation needed, no apology required, just a quiet understanding. This time, things would be different. And somehow, they were. Vivian stopped being the loudest person in the room. She learned to listen, gave space to younger voices, and didn't shy away from tasks she once thought beneath her. And I stopped hiding behind my screen. I began speaking at technical briefings, no longer dodging the camera. I stood before visiting students and shared my journey, not to boast, but to show them, you don't have to be the loudest to make something big. One weekend afternoon, as I was leaving the office, I saw Vivian standing before the recognition wall. The list of top contributors for the quarter. Her name was at the top. She looked at me and gave a small nod. Thank you for not giving up on me. I smiled. We're just getting started, Vivian. On Sunday, the whole family gathered at our usual brunch spot on the corner of Green Lake. Everything was just as it had always been. Dark wood chairs, sunlight filtering through striped curtains, and the smell of warm waffles filling the room. But something in the air felt different. I sat at the long table on the balcony, joined by my parents, Uncle Henry, Aunt Laura, and Vivian. She arrived 5 minutes late, but instead of wearing her usual flashy outfit or sparkling heels, she had on a simple white blouse, dark jeans, her hair neatly tied back, no makeup. As she approached me, her eyes hesitated, but then she gave a small nod. I nodded back. No words needed, just a look. That was enough. My mom was telling a story about her new flower bed when Uncle Henry suddenly chuckled and turned to me. So, Eleanor, are you still doing that little freelance thing from home, or just typing up random computer codes all day? I smiled. Not surprised. He still thought programming was just a souped-up video game. I didn't even have time to answer before a voice rang out clearly. Uncle, Vivian said, setting down her coffee and looking straight ahead. Eleanor is the smartest person I've ever known, and without her, I definitely wouldn't be where I am today. All eyes turned to her. I tilted my head slightly. But Vivian didn't shrink back like she usually did when put in the spotlight. She stood firm, gaze steady, voice unwavering. I used to think I knew everything, she continued. But Eleanor taught me something more important than knowledge: humility. Her quietness doesn't mean she has nothing to say. It means she chooses to act instead of show off. Uncle Henry looked stunned. Aunt Laura gave a subtle nod. My mother reached over and gently squeezed my hand. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her. And in that look, I saw everything words couldn't express: an unspoken apology, unvoiced gratitude, and respect, earned not by blood, but by truth. A moment later, the conversation shifted back to the weather and the upcoming holidays, but I knew something important had just happened. After the meal, as people began to leave the table, I stood up to grab my bag. Vivian stepped over, jacket in hand. She didn't say a word, but as she passed by, she whispered softly, "You don't have to forgive me, but I'll never be the same person again." I turned to her, and for the first time in a very long while, I gave her a genuine smile. "I know," I said, "and I never needed you to apologize." We walked out of the brunch spot in silence, but there was no longer any tension between us. What had happened wasn't forgotten, but it no longer lived in me like a wound. That afternoon, I went home, made myself a cup of tea, opened my laptop, and stared out the window toward Lake Union. Just as I took a sip of the warm tea, a message from Sam popped up. "Heard brunch wasn't half bad today?" I replied. "Not bad, let's call it a new beginning." And maybe, sometimes, forgiveness doesn't come through words. It comes when people finally see each other, not through judgment, but through late, honest understanding. Vivian and I will never be picture-perfect sisters. But now, we're no longer standing on opposite sides. We're two grown women who've learned from their own mistakes. And to me, that's a beautiful enough ending to one chapter, and a gentle start to the next. The story between Vivian and me taught me that sometimes understanding doesn't come from grand apologies, but from quiet, genuine change. It took me years to accept that being seen isn't the only measure of worth, but when truth is finally acknowledged, no rebuttal is needed. Silence is enough to make people reflect. Real life doesn't ask for perfection, only the courage to grow and the grace to begin again. What do you think about Eleanor and Vivian's journey? Can a late understanding be enough to mend a relationship that once seemed broken? Share your thoughts. And don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt family stories. I never expected my 35th birthday to become the mark of the cruelest betrayal of my life. All morning I was busy in the cozy little kitchen of the old wooden house on Willow Street, the house I had spent 5 long years restoring from a crumbling wreck into a place filled with memories. I had scrubbed every brick on the exposed wall by hand, replaced each window pane myself, and brought the backyard garden back to life with rows of lavender that bloomed bright purple in the summer. This wasn't just a house. It was my heart. The simple birthday party was something I had planned myself, just a few familiar faces in the family. My parents, uncles, my brother, Daniel, and of course, Ivy, the cousin who always showed up at family gatherings with a smile as sweet as honey and a cocktail dress that didn't quite match the warm, intimate vibe of the celebration. "Olivia, open your gift. This one's really special," my mom said with a big smile, her hands trembling slightly as she handed me an envelope wrapped in shiny silver paper, tied with a red bow like it was the most precious gift in the world. I smiled back, not suspecting a thing. The room was filled with laughter and conversation, the scent of vanilla cake still lingering in the air. I untied the bow, peeled back the foil wrapping, and pulled out the stack of papers inside. My eyes quickly scanned the bold, black-inked heading, short and cold. "Eviction notice." The air in the room thickened. My hand froze mid-air, my mind spinning. "What is this?" I whispered, barely recognizing my own voice. My father wouldn't look at me, his head bowed as if in shame. My mother blinked rapidly, avoiding my gaze. Daniel took a small step back. And Ivy... She smiled, but not her usual gentle smile. It was the smile of someone who knew everything, waiting for the moment another person crumbled. "Olivia, we know today isn't the ideal time, but it's time we were honest," my mother said, her voice barely above a breeze. "What do you mean? This is my house." I shot to my feet, the chair scraping harshly against the wooden floor. "I renovated every brick, every door in this place. I poured my life savings into it." Ivy set her wineglass down and stood up slowly, her voice calm and weightless. "But the house is still under your aunt and uncle's name, Olivia. On paper, it was never really yours." I turned to her. "You knew? You're siding with them?" "I'm just helping the family make a smart decision," she said, smoothing the silk of her dress. "This neighborhood's hot right now. It makes sense to sell." I let out a dry, hollow laugh. "So this is the birthday present you all prepared for me? An eviction notice? And you turned my home into a market listing." My father still said nothing. My mother stepped closer, reaching as if to take my hand. "You have 45 days to get things in order. We'll help with moving costs if you need." I pulled my hand away like I'd touched fire. "I don't need anything from anyone. I need answers." "How long have you all been planning this?" Ivy raised her chin, unfazed. "About 3 months. I've already spoken to a few potential investors. They're interested in the size of the lot and the prime location. This old wooden house? Old." I choked on the word. "Every corner, every brick in here is my work. I've lived and loved this house with everything I have." Daniel spoke, his voice low. "Liv, maybe you should calm down. We can talk about this later." No later. I want the truth." "Right, now." No one answered. The room sank into an unbearable silence. I stepped back, heart pounding, eyes scanning the familiar faces that suddenly felt like strangers. "Get out of my house," I said, my voice low but firm. "Olivia." I said out, now. One by one, they left the room. none of them daring to look back at me. Only Ivy remained, facing me. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said with a shrug. "And you just made me lose all faith in family." I walked to the door and opened it. Out. Ivy gave me one last look, her eyes glinting with something icy. "You're fighting a battle you can't win. Don't let emotions cloud your judgment." The door shut behind her. I stood there for a long time, eyes still fixed on the paper in my hand. In all my years, I had never felt so hollow. But in that silence, a thought sparked. If Ivy thought I would give up that easily, she didn't know me at all. I sat motionless in the armchair by the window, the late afternoon sun slanting through the sheer curtains, casting a soft orange hue across the floor. The eviction notice lay silently on the coffee table, like an open wound that hadn't stopped bleeding, in a room still echoing with the warmth of laughter from that morning. I should have cried, should have been furious, but the only thing I felt at that moment was suspicion. Ivy. Since when had that seemingly harmless cousin become the mastermind behind pushing me out of my own home? From the casual comments about property value to the scrutinizing looks I once mistook for admiration. All of it now formed the perfect pieces of a carefully hidden scheme. I picked up my phone, my fingers dialing almost instinctively. The first person I needed was Emma, my best friend from college, the one who'd pulled me through sleepless exam nights, heartbreaks, and the craziest home renovation projects. "Olivia?" Emma's voice came through after 3 rings. "Are you okay?" "No," I answered bluntly. "I need you here. Bring your laptop, and if you still have that stack of old renovation permit files, bring those too." Less than an hour later, Emma showed up at my door, hair tousled and her backpack stuffed. As soon as she saw me, she didn't ask a thing, just gave my shoulder a firm squeeze, walked in, pulled out her laptop, and began searching through folders organized with obsessive precision. "Got it," Emma said, turning the screen toward me. "Every permit, blueprint, and city approval. I backed them up ages ago. Good thing I never deleted them." I stared at the screen. These files could be the key. Ivy said the neighbors complained I was renovating without permits. She showed my parents some documents, but no one would let me see them. Emma frowned. "Could they be fake?" I nodded, and if they are, then she's executing a much bigger plan. That night I texted Daniel, my brother. We used to be close, but ever since he got married and moved out, the distance had grown. Still, I knew if anyone in the family had any sense left, it was him. "I need to meet you. Urgently," I wrote. Daniel replied a few minutes later. "Tomorrow morning, Cornerstone Cafe, 8 o'clock. The next morning, I arrived 10 minutes early, sitting by the window with a cup of hot tea. Daniel walked in looking exhausted like he hadn't slept all night. I didn't waste time. "You knew about the eviction, didn't you?" Daniel nodded, avoiding my eyes. "Yeah, about 2 weeks ago. Ivy told Mom and Dad that you weren't fit to manage the house, that there was a risk of legal trouble because of unpermitted work. All lies." I placed Emma's folder on the table. "Here's every permit, legal, verified." Daniel flipped through a few pages, his face slowly draining of color. "So, she lied to me too? And I believe there's more to it." I looked him straight in the eye. "Ivy wants the house, not for herself but to sell. Probably to some development project. Maybe someone she's dating?" Daniel frowned. "His name's Max Harper. I've never met him, but Dad mentioned he's into real estate investment." "Exactly. I'm going to dig deeper, but I need your help. If Mom and Dad believe her because of documents, I'll prove she forged them." Daniel sighed. "I'm with you. Better late than never." Back at home, Emma and I began tracking leads. She had an old classmate named Chloe who worked at the city's land records office, now overseeing construction permits for my area. After a few calls and a post-work coffee invite, Chloe agreed to meet at the public library. She pulled out a thick file and flipped to the page I needed. Here's the petition about noise and unauthorized renovations supposedly filed by a neighbor, or at least the copy that was submitted. But the strange thing is, there's no original, no official case number. I frowned. You mean, it's not in the system? Exactly. And the name listed as the complainant doesn't match anyone on Willow Street's resident registry. I double-checked. This might be a fabricated document. Emma snapped photos of every page, her eyes lighting up. We've got signs of forgery. I felt a chill run down my spine. If Ivy had actually faked documents to manipulate my parents, this wasn't just a family conflict anymore. It was a serious ethical and legal issue. We left the library as twilight fell. The streetlights flickered on, reflecting off the familiar Willow Street Historic District sign. I paused at my gate, gripping the folder tightly. This house wasn't just where I lived. It was the story of my growth, the proof of my dedication and love poured into every brick, every window frame. And now, it was under threat by someone who once called me sis. I looked over at Emma, my voice steady. If Ivy thinks she's smarter than me, she's made a huge mistake. Emma nodded, a faint smile playing on her lips. Game on, Liv, and we're going to win. Darkness settled over Willow Street, but inside me a light had just been lit. The light of truth, and I was going to bring it into the open, no matter what. A light drizzle was falling when Emma and I returned to the city the next morning, our hands clutching the folder full of new leads. It was time to piece them together into a bigger picture. Ivy didn't just want to take my house. She was preparing to demolish it. That afternoon, Daniel took us to meet one of his contacts, a man named Marcus Bell who worked at the city planning office. Marcus was the cautious type, but after reviewing the documents Chloe had confirmed as fake, he frowned deeply. This is strange, Marcus said, flipping through the detailed plans with professionally drawn lines. I seen this version during a closed-door meeting a few weeks ago. Who's the developer? I asked, a gut feeling beginning to simmer. Marcus typed a few lines into his computer and turned the screen toward me. Under the logo of a construction company called Harper & Stone Group was the heading, Proposed Luxury Apartment Complex, Location, 197 Willow Street. I froze. That was my address, my house. Emma looked at me, eyes wide. Max Harper, Ivy's boyfriend. He's the Harper in Harper & Stone. I tried to keep my voice steady. Do they have any documents signed by my parents? Marcus paused, then nodded. There's a land survey approval form with signatures from Mr. and Mrs. Rickman, your parents. I stood still. But my parents never told me about any of this. They still think I broke the law, let alone signed off on selling the land. Marcus frowned. The signatures look odd. Might be copies. If you want, I can have the legal department take a closer look. Please, I cut in, as soon as possible. Marcus agreed to help. On the way home, I pulled out my phone and started typing a message to my mom, but deleted it before hitting send. I wasn't ready to face them. Not yet. Not until everything was clear. That night, Emma stayed over like we used to during college. We sat by the fireplace, going over every blueprint, signature, and seal. This, notary seal, Emma said, pointing to the survey form. Whose is it? I held the paper up to the light. Under the round red stamp were the words, Notary Public, Elizabeth Sterling. I frowned. Sterling. That's Ivy's last name, right? Emma opened her laptop and searched. Here it is, Elizabeth Sterling, Ivy's biological mother. She used to be a notary, but she retired almost 2 years ago. Then, how did she notarize a document filed just weeks ago? I asked, feeling heat rush to my temples. Emma looked at me, serious. If that seal was used after she retired, that's falsifying a notarized document. That's a criminal offense. I let out a long breath. Ivy was taking this too far. The next morning, I was about to drive to meet Marcus when I saw my windshield shattered. A large rock lay in the front seat, still covered in damp dust. Wrapped around it was a small piece of paper, scrawled with a shaky handwritten message. "Back off while you still can, Olivia." My heart pounded. I looked around, but the street was empty. No one suspicious in sight. I called the police and, while waiting for them to arrive, I texted Emma and Daniel to come immediately. The police took my statement and collected the rock as evidence. They advised me to install security cameras and to report any further incidents. I nodded, but I knew. This wasn't about paperwork anymore. Ivy had started sending warnings through action. 3 days later, I received an email from Marcus with the subject, "Signature Verification Results." I opened it, palms sweating. After comparing with the original signatures on the Rickman's property and tax documents, we have determined the signature on the land survey is forged. I clenched my fist. That was our first piece of solid proof. Emma called me as soon as she got the copy. "It's starting, Liv. We need a game plan." That evening, in my kitchen, Emma, Daniel, and I mapped out a strategy. The plan: gather all the evidence. Fake documents, forged notarizations, shady land surveys, and Ivy's connections to Max Harper and the real estate development firm. We also agreed we had to stop them from demolishing the house before the truth came out. Emma suggested reaching out to Leela, her friend who worked at the Historical Preservation Office, to check if my house might qualify for protected status. If it did, they couldn't touch it without city approval. Just then, the doorbell rang. I stepped out and froze. Sitting on the porch was a cardboard box with no sender listed. I opened it. Inside were full-color photographs, shots of every corner of my house. The kitchen, the living room, the stairwell where I used to hang my grandmother's photo, even the window I had just repainted last week. Every one of them was marked with a bright red X. No note, none needed. The message was crystal clear. I looked at Daniel. "They've been inside the house." He snatched the box from my hands. "No way. You locked the doors, right?" "Of course." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm. "But they have a key. Probably from Mom." Daniel pulled out his phone and called our mother immediately. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I watched his face shift with every second. When he hung up, his expression was dark. "Ivy borrowed the key yesterday. Told Mom it was to take measurements for her engagement party." "And Mom believed that?" I asked, my voice hoarse. Daniel nodded. "She's suspicious now, but it's too late." I walked toward the window, looking out over the backyard. The garden, where my grandmother once planted rows of lavender, was now cloaked in evening mist. "We need to move fast," I said, my voice low but firm. "If Ivy wants a war, I'll show her. I'm not someone who goes down easy." I turned back to the only two people still standing by me. "The campaign starts tonight. We're not just protecting this house. We're exposing the truth. Peace." Fear still lingered inside me, but for the first time in weeks, it didn't overpower my resolve. I wasn't alone. And I wasn't going to lose. 2 days after the break-in, I sat in the office of my lawyer, Sarah Holden, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a calm voice who had helped me with property documents in the past. This time, she wasn't just my legal advisor. She was a key ally in the battle I was about to face. Sarah flipped through the documents I'd gathered from Marcus, Chloe, and even the X-marked photos I'd taken as evidence. "This is a pattern of deliberate behavior," she concluded, tapping her finger on the survey contract copy. "Forged signatures, improper notarization, and clear organized fraud. If we can prove Ivy and Max colluded for personal gain, you won't just keep your house, you could take them to court." I nodded, but deep down I knew one thing. Winning in court wouldn't be enough. I needed a blow Ivy couldn't recover from. A truth bomb dropped right where she believed she stood in the spotlight of her own glory. The night before the engagement, where Ivy planned to introduce Max to family, investors, and wealthy friends, she had rented the Bellevue Grand Hotel, a lavish venue in the northern part of the city, to host a perfect debut evening. I would turn that party into a full reveal. And to do that, I needed someone on the inside. Someone who knew Max and Harper and Stone's operations better than anyone else. That person appeared unexpectedly. Lena Harper, Max's younger sister. I'd met Lena briefly back when I still got along with Ivy. She was quiet, usually hanging on the sidelines of their gatherings. But today, she reached out to me directly, leaving a brief message. Olivia, I know what Ivy's done. Meet me at 5 at Bean and Birch. I arrived on time. Lena was already seated in the corner, dressed in a charcoal gray coat, her sharp features betraying the tension in her posture. She gestured for me to sit, then handed me a USB drive. This has everything, she said, her voice soft but firm. Blueprints, emails between Max and Ivy, plans for clearing the land, including your house. I held my breath. Why are you helping me? Lena looked me straight in the eye. I used to believe Max was a good person, but he and Ivy only care about power and image. They've turned our family business into a tool to hide their wrongdoing. I don't want to be part of it anymore. I nodded. Thank you. This means a lot. There's more, Lena said, pulling out a thick printout from her bag. This is the party plan. Ivy rearranged the guest list, and you're not on it. I laughed. Of course. She knows I won't stay silent. But I have a way to get you in. Lena slid a formal invitation across the table, still blank. I was in charge of delivering backup invites to the press. I kept this one. I took it and thanked her once more. Inside me, determination had turned into a slow-burning fire. I was no longer just fighting for my house, but for justice, for truth, for everyone who had ever been dismissed, deceived by expensive dresses and fake smiles. That night, I sat in my study with Sarah and Emma, and we prepared everything down to the last detail. Sarah compiled the documents into a complete dossier: forged evidence, falsified signatures, plans to demolish the house, internal company emails, and most notably an audio recording provided by Lena where Ivy said, "After the engagement party, no one will be able to stop us." You're bringing all this to the party? Emma asked, her voice tinged with nerves. I nodded. Not just bringing it. I'm revealing it in front of everyone. Ivy wants to shine in the spotlight? Then let the truth shine right on her. Sarah handed me another USB. I've backed everything up here, and I've also sent a copy to the media's legal rep, in case something unexpected happens. I gave a soft smile. Can never be too careful. The next morning, I received an anonymous message. Stop now, if you don't want things to get worse. There are things you can't control, Olivia. I showed the message to Sarah. She looked at me calmly and said, This just means they're scared. By evening, I dressed carefully. A simple, elegant black dress and a pearl necklace that once belonged to my grandmother. It felt like a charm, reminding me of where I came from, the love I poured into that home, and the reason I couldn't walk away. I stepped into the grand lobby of the Bellevue Grand Hotel, chandeliers casting golden light across the polished marble floor. Soft music played, glasses clinked, and laughter floated through empty congratulations. Ivy stood at the center of the ballroom, draped in a shimmering white gown, her arm looped around Max's. They looked like a magazine cover. But her gaze faltered the moment she saw me. I smiled, holding up the invitation. Sorry, I couldn't miss this party. She tried to hide her surprise behind a smile. Olivia, I didn't think you would... Excuse me, I cut her off, walking straight into the heart of the room. I lifted a wine glass and tapped it gently. If I may have everyone's attention before dinner begins. All eyes turned toward me. The room paused for a breath. I took a deep one of my own. This isn't a toast, I began, eyes drifting toward Ivy and Max. It's the truth everyone deserves to know. About this party, about that couple, and about a house under threat because of greed. Ivy stiffened. Max gripped her hand. I reached for the USB Sarah had just handed me and plugged it into the large screen behind me. Please watch. The lights dimmed, the screen lit up, and the storm was about to begin. The light from the big screen cast a glow across the ballroom. All eyes focused on the first image, a detailed development blueprint for a luxury condo complex named Willow Heights, with a clearly listed address, 197 Willow Street. A wave of murmurs swept through the room. A few guests whispered to each other, others stepped back, glancing at Max and Ivy as if waiting for an explanation. I stepped closer to the mic, my voice calm but firm. This is a property currently owned by my family, and it's where I've lived for over 10 years. The plan to demolish that house and replace it with this luxury complex has never had my consent. All the so-called approvals you've seen are fake. Next, the screen displayed a series of documents. Among them, the land survey with my parents' forged signatures and the notary seal belonging to someone who retired last year. A sharp knock on the table came from a middle-aged man in the front row. Mr. Randall Morris, the project's lead investor. Forged documents? Do you have verifiable proof? I nodded and turned to Sarah, who stepped onto the stage. Sarah spoke clearly and firmly. We have confirmation from the city's legal department. All signatures, seals, and survey approvals fail to match official records. The notary, Elizabeth Sterling, MS, Ivy's biological mother, hasn't been licensed for over a year. This puts the entire documentation into the category of criminal fraud. Ivy stood frozen, her face drained of color. Max stepped forward, gripping her hand, ready to speak, but I didn't give them the chance. I'm not done, I said, eyes fixed on the screen. The next piece of evidence played through the speakers. An audio recording. Ivy's voice rang out, cold and deliberate. Let them think Olivia's breaking the law. Once the house loses legal protection, we can buy it for next to nothing. After the engagement party, everything will be in our hands. Then Max's voice chimed in. I've cleaned out all the internal files. No one will trace it back. The ballroom fell silent. The air turned heavy as lead. Max turned to Ivy, his face no longer composed. You recorded our conversation? Ivy whispered. I don't know who did. I looked at them, a faint smile forming on my lips. Maybe you don't, but someone close to you does. Lena stepped out from the crowd, her eyes sharp as ice. I sent the recording, because I won't let you and Ivy drag our family through the mud. Max's jaw dropped, staring at his sister like he was seeing her for the first time. Lena, what are you doing? Ending this game, Lena replied. Ending all of it, Sarah continued. We've submitted all the evidence to the Department of Planning, the notary office, and the authorities. Police have received formal complaints for document forgery, attempted property fraud, and intentional damage to private property. As she finished, 2 plainclothes officers entered the ballroom. One stepped up to Ivy and said, Ms. Ivy Sterling, you are under investigation for document forgery and conspiracy to commit fraud. We ask for your cooperation. A stunned wave rippled through the room like a brewing storm. Ivy turned to me, her eyes filled with rage and reluctant resignation. You'll regret this, Olivia. You have no idea what you've just stepped into. I held her gaze, calm. And you have no idea who you underestimated. Max hadn't been handcuffed, but the investors had already started leaving his table, some without a word, others casting looks of disdain. Randall Morris slammed the project file onto the table and stood up coldly. Harper and Stone has lost all credibility with me. Sarah leaned toward me and whispered, We should go. The rest is in the hands of the authorities now. I nodded, but before leaving I paused in the center of the room, facing my parents, who had arrived late and witnessed the final moments. My mother's face was pale, my father frozen in place. I'm sorry I had to do this publicly, I said, my voice no longer angry but filled with sorrow. But without the truth, I would always be seen as the one at fault. My mother stepped forward and took my hand. Olivia, I had no idea Ivy could do this. We're truly sorry. I gently squeezed her hand, then turned to leave. Outside the hotel, the cool evening air brushed against my skin like quiet reassurance. Sarah handed me a folder. The court will review everything in the coming weeks, but with this evidence, your win is almost certain. Lena stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder. Thank you for fighting. For the truth. I looked out toward the city lights in the distance, a slow smile spreading across my face. I just did what was right. Because I won't let anyone take away the place I call home. Peace began to return to my heart. The battle wasn't completely over, but the web of lies had been shattered. And for the first time in months, I was certain of one thing. The house still stood, and so did I. 6 weeks after that unforgettable engagement party, spring had truly returned to Willow Street. The trees lining the sidewalks began to bud, and the scent of lilacs from the neighbor's garden danced in the breeze. Everything seemed to slow down, as if life was giving me a pause to breathe after the chaos. My house, or rather the home I fought to protect, still stood strong, even after being threatened by greed and deceit. But what I didn't expect was that the very storm meant to tear it down would bring me a new family, a community I never knew I belonged to. Emma still stopped by every day, bringing coffee, notebooks, and ideas to renovate the house, not to sell, but to live in. Daniel came by on weekends with his wife and kids, helping me repaint the faded white fence and plant asters in the front yard. Lena, once just a quiet shadow at a lavish party, had now become a vital part of this healing journey. After the scandal, she officially left Harper & Stone and helped launch a local heritage preservation fund with a team of community activists. Olivia, she said one afternoon as we inspected the roof, this place isn't just your memory, it's part of this city. We want to start here. I was speechless when she handed me a bronze plaque engraved with small words. The Rickman House, a living legacy of Willow Street. My throat tightened. No words were needed. I knew I wasn't alone anymore. The person I least expected also appeared one quiet morning. Max Harper. No suit, no arrogance. Just a man standing at my gate, looking lost. I'm not here to apologize, he said plainly. Because I know sorry doesn't undo what I've done. I crossed my arms in silence. But I want to make it right, Max continued. I've resigned from the company. Lena and her team are building a preservation program, and if you'll allow it, I'd like to support it financially. I looked at him for a long moment and finally nodded. Not because I forgive you, but because I believe everyone deserves a chance to start over. As long as they really start from zero. We shook hands and I felt lighter. Not because Max had changed, but because I was no longer bound by bitterness. As for Ivy, the media moved on after she received a suspended sentence for document forgery and attempted fraud. No one in my family mentioned her again. My parents relocated to a quiet suburb, away from the noise. One afternoon, as I was sorting through old photo albums in the living room, my mom stopped by. She silently looked around the house, filled with memories. I found this in Grandma's old box, she said, placing a worn wooden comb in my hand. She used to brush my hair with it as a child. She always said this place wasn't just a home. It was the heart of the family. I said nothing. I just opened the window where I used to sit for hours as a child, reading in the sun. And in that moment, I knew this house would live on, not just in me, but in everyone who stepped through its door with sincerity. A few weeks later, I hosted a small gathering. Not fancy, not flashy, just a warm backyard dinner with the people who stood by me through the storm. Under the glow of string lights, everyone gathered around wooden tables, sharing food, laughter, and stories never told. Lena brought a large framed photo to hang from the cherry tree. My grandmother, standing in front of the house, her face radiant. Emma whispered to me, "You should make this a tradition, a day of hope, the day you took everything back." I nodded, eyes lifted to the tree full of lights. A day of return. Daniel raised his glass and called for silence. Let's toast to Olivia, who didn't just save a house, but restored our faith in the truth. Glasses clinked. I lifted mine, clinking gently with those around me, then whispered to myself, "And to those who dare to rise." That night, after everyone had gone, I sat alone on the front steps. The spring breeze danced through my hair. I looked around. Every brick, every window, every familiar footprint, all felt alive. I knew with certainty this wasn't just where I lived. This was where I belonged. And no one would ever take that from me again. From the fight to save my childhood home, I learned that sometimes loss and betrayal become the stepping stones to something far more precious: courage, truth, and the people who truly stand beside you. A home isn't just a roof over your head, but a sanctuary of memories, love, and resilience. And now I haven't just kept my home. I've reclaimed myself, stronger, wiser, and unafraid of losing anything ever again. What do you think about Olivia's journey and all she's been through? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel to keep discovering more heartfelt, inspiring stories about family and life behind the front door.